These are the things that I'd really like you to keep in mind. And they are really for life. It's not just for now, just not just this transition phase, but it's things that you can remember whenever things are going a little off balance. Just come back to these principles, these things that are like the foundation of everything that we've learned so far. And once you have this kind of understanding, when you get the principles and you're sort of, oopsie, when you're sort of clear on the principles, you will always be able to resolve yourself, whatever imbalance you might have. First and foremost, remember right from the very, very first time that we met, we talked about the importance of a daily routine. It's so important to have a routine that actually that understanding of how our biochemistry is affected by the daily cycles and the daily routine became an actual Nobel Prize winning science in 2017. So this is proven and really powerful stuff. What having a routine does is balances vata, and it helps to improve ojas. It helps to give you this vitality because there's less of an unsettled energy in the system. And so the more you can keep a routine, whatever your routine, doesn't have to be a specific routine, but your particular routine that you know works for you, it will support every other aspect of whatever your life entails. The other thing to remember is the principle of balance. So the balancing the opposites. So when you have something that's dry and crunchy and light, you need something that's heavy and moist and dense or solid. And that's another way of saying kapha will balance out vata. As long as you can keep that principle in mind, you'll always be able to kind of organize yourself in terms of how you eat, how you respond to the weather, how you respond to the climate, and so on. Remember that you want to eat and drink water in this way as well. So if you feel heavy and sluggish and your digestion is slow, don't drink a lot of water. It means that there's already too much of that going on, too much wet, too much heaviness. Give more space. Remember, vata also means space. And so give more space to digestion, do nothing, and allow your digestion to sort itself out before adding anything in. Like will increase like. So if you're already vata and very spacey, and then let's say you have popcorn and I don't know, crunchy raw apples, and it's cold outside, and you're running around and busy and doing a lot of talking and intellectual stuff, then you're going to increase vata even more. So that will just keep adding to the vata. So we definitely want to balance out with the opposites. And that opposite, of course, works with the hot and cold. It works with the warm and the damp as well. So the pitta quality of hot also is balanced by the damp, the wetness of kapha, as well as the cool of kapha or the cool of vata. So you have to kind of feel, what kind of cool do I need if I'm overheated? Do I need cool with space and lightness, or do I need cool with heaviness and density? Either way, you just really think quite logically, what's going on in my health right now, what's going on in my body. And then remember how important it is to understand your digestion at any given time. What's the nature of my digestion? Is it fast? Is it slow? Am I overheating? Am I drying out? Is it too heavy, too dense, too moist? And remember that is the thing to keep putting your attention on. How can I improve my digestive fire? Remember that image of the campfire where if you put too much water on it, it'll go out. If you put too many logs on the fire, it'll go out. If you don't have enough logs on the fire or it's too dry, it'll also go out. So all of these things are to keep as a metaphor for your own digestion, for your own good health. Also, really quickly rectify any signs that you have ama present. So whenever you feel fatigue, and especially if you feel that after a meal, if you feel dull and kind of listless and depressed, if you feel heavy or you're gaining or losing weight, which is a sign that ama is present, it means that you're not able to hold and take in the nourishment that you're consuming, obviously depending on how you're eating. And any other inflammatory symptoms like allergies, rashes, gas, bloating, etc. Make sure you take care of it immediately. Don't wait for that to accumulate over days or even weeks. Just recognize this is a problem, and the quicker you solve it, the faster it will be solved. It'll be easier to resolve. When you wake up in the morning and you don't have hunger, A lot of people say, oh, yeah, I skip breakfast because I'm never hungry in the morning. But that is really problematic, actually, because the natural sort of biorhythm would be to not eat in the evening or to eat much less in the evening and have your whole digestive tract be detoxified and cleansed out through the night so that by the time the morning comes, then you actually are ready now to eat something new. When you're not hungry, it means that detoxing process and the digesting process has not happened yet. And in that case, you really are better to take a couple of days or maybe even a week of intermittent fasting to get that balance back, clear out the ama, and come back to being hungry in the morning. Always think in terms of, if you want to lighten your intake of food, skip your dinner and eat your breakfast. Don't skip breakfast, because when you do that, it throws off blood sugar, and it's not very helpful because it actually starts to push vata higher and higher. Remember the proper food combining as well. So when ama is high, particularly, you have to be absolutely strict about not taking fruit and milk, or eating grains and dairy, for example, or eating, all these combinations of things that will really tax your body and not allow you to digest fully and not allow you to get the nutrition from your food. So you want to eat foods that are simple. A go-to food would be khichdi, that you always know, okay, if I'm not sure what to do, I'll make a really soupy, easy to digest, liquidy kind of khichdi with whatever vegetables I'd like. Use seasonal vegetables in your khichdi. Avoid putting these incompatible things together, because even if you are healthy, it will eventually start to throw you off. And it's going to have an effect on your digestion, which therefore will lead to building up ama. And so just keep that in mind. Remembering the principles of balance is one way to know, what should I eat at this moment? And when you're not sure, eat khichdi until you feel better, and then let your instinct take over so you can take foods that you feel attracted to. Don't trust your instinct. Don't trust your attraction to food if you have ama imbalance. You're not going to be craving healthy foods if you have an ama imbalance. You'll crave more of the worst. And then mix things well, so that you remember these basic rules, like don't put animal proteins with milk, for example, and never eat melons with other food, melons of any kind. And never eat grains and fruit, for example. So no more like fresh fruit on oatmeal or granola or any of those kinds of things. Absolutely, really impossible to eat. Same thing with avoiding combinations like grains with milk and eggs. Those you should really conserve for a really special occasion. If you have a croissant or I don't know, a financier or some kind of nice little cake or something as a treat on a weekend, it's not going to be the end of the world, but making sure that that's not a regular part of your diet, because those things are guaranteed to cause ama. And if your digestion is not strong, it will become really problematic. And then cooking any kind of starches and fruit together will really cause a problem of fermentation in the gut. And that's almost never going to work out. And so when you plan a meal, if you plan a dinner party, or if you plan to go out for a restaurant meal, keep that in mind as well. Wonderful things like apple crumble, and actually apples do better than any other fruit when combined with other things, but even still, apple crumble or rhubarb crumble and all these things, wonderful fruit pies and things, are actually a complete nightmare for your digestion. So keep it to a minimum, or keep your digestion really, really strong. Never combine lemon and dairy. That is never an appropriate combination. So if you're looking for that creamy texture and you want the lemony taste, like you want some kind of pudding, for example, then add coconut milk instead. And so you'll get that creaminess, and the lemon and coconut is a perfectly appropriate combination because it's actually fruit. You'll notice that to begin a yogurt culture, you would, or even a cheese culture, for example, you would use lemon and dairy because it actually sours the milk. Eat your fruit on its own. So whatever type of fruit it is, the farther away from any kind of meal, the better you'll digest it. Dates and milk are one of these exceptions again, where dates have a particular quality that combines very well. And when you combine it, for example, into the ojas milk, it's actually quite nourishing. But I have to say that, for example, if you do have really high ama, low agni, high ama, and you're not digesting things well, don't make the ojas milk because it's not going to be digested well. Instead, fix the digestion and then build up and use the ojas milk once your digestion is back on track. And chewing, making sure that every single bite in your mouth is completely transformed before you swallow. Mixing your food with saliva will already start the process of digestion because those enzymes in your saliva are already breaking down the various proteins and starches and other enzymes that need to be broken down as you pass the food through your digestion. Each stage along the way through digestion breaks down different enzymes. And if you miss the part in your mouth, then those enzymes are not going to get broken down efficiently by the rest of the digestive system. And that's where you start to have problems and you can actually start to pass completely undigested food. Proteins and starches and carbohydrates are all different and they have a different rate of digestion and different enzymes required to break them down. So if you combine a lot of these things in one meal, that becomes really complex. And so you want to make sure that you make the meals as simple as possible. I mean, let's give an example: protein, starches, and carbohydrates. For example, pasta with, I've had this offered to me when I went to northern Italy in Genoa. One of their specialties is their wonderful pesto with pasta and potatoes, all mixed up. And so that's great if you're out working on the farm all morning, but it's not so great if your digestion isn't strong. It's all dependent on you and how you digest, but it's a really good thing to separate these things out and keep your meals simple. And so if we take the example of pasta and pesto, have just the pasta and the pesto, or have just the potatoes and the pesto. And that at least eliminates the complex carbohydrates, the interference of the carbohydrates. Especially for carbs, it's in the mouth that the enzymes are broken down. And that's really important if, when you're eating on the run, fast food, or just having a sandwich at your desk or whatever, those kinds of foods are always high in carbohydrates. So it's even worse in the sense that if you're not chewing properly and you're not breaking down those carbs, it's doubly bad for your digestion. Don't make your stomach do all that work because it's just not going to be able to do the job. Also, remember the 6 tastes. So these are your guide in terms of how it is that you want to balance out at least your day, if not every meal, more or less. So you want to always go for 4 or 5 of the 6 tastes if you can in every meal. Sweet is the most prominent taste, and then all of the other tastes are following in order of prominence. But when we talk about sweet in Ayurveda, we're not actually talking about sugar. Sugar is obviously sweet, or even derivatives of any kind of cane sugar like jaggery or anything like that, or dates and so on. But it's the taste of sweet, and sweet taste comes from things like fennel and carrots, and milk even has a sweet taste. So all these other things that have the sweet taste are going to satisfy the urge for sweet or the need for sweet, but without necessarily having the sugar, because we're not actually looking to increase sugar intake. So please never confuse the word sweet with what we in the West think of as sweets. It's not the same thing, even though, of course, the taste is sweet. But we're not talking about that. We're not asking you to eat a lot of sugar. So the sweet taste is also in wheat. So you'll find that in pasta, you'll find it in bread, etc. The other 5 tastes are actually there to support the digestion of sweet. So everything else that you eat is to really improve your digestion. The sweet taste is kind of for sustenance. It gives you nourishment, it gives you satisfaction, it gives you the heaviness. This is the kapha that builds tissue. And so all of the rest of what you eat is doing the service of these sweet tastes, the sweet taste. So, okay, here I put a chocolate, but let's ignore the chocolate. Just remember carrots. The sweet taste is prominent in food because it gives us contentment and nourishment. And that comes from all kinds of carbohydrates. Remember, there's carbs in vegetables as well, and not just in processed grains and things like that. Sweet is also in proteins. and fats. So you've noticed probably with your ghee that there's actually a sweetness, and butter, of course, has that sweetness, and that relates to kapha, right? The water element and the heavy aspect. Sour is like the hydrochloric acid in your stomach. You've probably had an experience at least once where you didn't digest properly and you maybe have burped up or had a little bit of a backup of the sour taste from the bile in the digestive tract in the stomach. So that starts to break down the sweet directly in the stomach. And then salt is transporting the nutrients throughout the body. And it's like the vector that helps nutrition spread throughout the body, and it improves digestion. So obviously we have to be careful not to overdo the salt, because that will increase pitta, too much heat, and vata, too much dryness. And then the pungent taste, ginger, for example, is to increase the secretion of enzymes and distribute nutrients throughout the body. And that helps with assimilation, and it helps all nutrition to be better absorbed in the small intestine. And for example, if you need to take medicine, if you need to take whatever the medicine, but let's use an example like ashwagandha, if you take it with ginger, it will help move deeper into the cells. Obviously, ghee and milk are also excellent for transporting most medicines. Ginger has that potency as well. And so you can, if you, for example, you're in a place you don't have ghee or you don't have access to milk, but you want to say, take ashwagandha or take brahmi or any other thing, then take it with ginger and you'll find that it actually improves the absorption. And bitter is the detoxifying quality. So remember, we link that to the gallbladder and the liver, kind of like a detergent to wash out fats or to separate out the fats from the other elements that the body might use. And so that bitter taste is extremely important. This is this bitter melon, bitter gourd that you see there. You can also find that in Indian grocers. And when you cook it, it's not so unpleasant. It's really, really bitter when it's raw, but you should never eat it raw. But when you cook it and you make a nice curried melon or something like that, that's a really lovely meal that you can have with rice, for example. It's a really good meal. This is why medicine, for example, has these bitter tastes. It's almost all medicine is bitter. And we even have that expression in English, which is the bitter pill or the bitter medicine that we have to take, a bitter pill to swallow. And it's necessary because otherwise then the body's not going to respond and it's not going to stimulate the filtration process of the toxins through the liver. And then astringent, finally, is the taste that balances the enzymes. And it has that scraping or that alleviating that kind of drying property. It's what reduces heaviness. It reduces density. So it lowers kapha and increases vata. So for vata types or a vata imbalance, take these kinds of things in moderation. And when you take them, make sure that you take them with a substantial amount of moist food and olive oil or whatever other oil, ghee or sesame oil or whatever oil. For example, if you notice in traditional cooking, they do that spontaneously. So the chickpeas that you see up in the upper left, when they make hummus in any Middle Eastern preparation, it has a lot of olive oil, a lot of tahini, so that's sesame that is very high in oil. And then the salt, which helps with digestion. Some people even put a bit of garlic in there, and they might even put some hot pepper in there, and usually za'atar or some other type of spice, and that all helps with the digestion of the chickpeas. So don't overdo that because of that astringent quality. Tannins are also astringent, so things that you can feel that tannin. You can also find it in wine, for example. It's that thing that makes your mouth a little dry. Earlier, we were talking about triphala having that, and there is that astringent quality in triphala as well, because the triphala is designed specifically to help escort ama out of the body and get rid of all of the excess. Vinegar is another great astringent, and that you can take, for example, especially apple cider vinegar, which is deeply nourishing as well. Take 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in 200 milliliters of water, and that's a great refreshing and really healthy drink. So consider those kinds of foods as always needing to be balanced. Don't take too much. If you drink, for example, lots of green tea throughout the day, it's too much. A little bit is very helpful, and too much is not good. Bananas should always be eaten ripe. It's very rare that bananas can be tolerated when they're not ripe. And so, for example, if you have a bunch of bananas and you want to eat them, or you need to eat them for whatever reason, sometimes I find myself having to finish food before I travel or something like that. Then you peel the banana, you slice it in half lengthwise, you put ghee on the pan, and you lightly cook the banana, slowly cook the banana. So you want it cooked all the way through. It goes very soft and sweet, and you can add some cinnamon to that and eat that as a treat, as a dessert or a treat. And then spinach also must always be eaten with oil. Leafy greens of all kinds, you must never eat leafy greens or any cruciferous vegetables without oil. And that doesn't matter your constitution. It's just not appropriate for digestion to have only that. That's why people get gas, because there's insufficient balance in the qualities of the food. So all of these legumes that you see, for example, the coral lentils that you see on the bottom, and the green split peas that you see down there, they're all in this astringent category. Remember that whatever you want to eat, there's no food that's off limit. It all depends on everything that we've just seen. So it depends on your ability to digest it. It depends on the combination of flavors. It depends on you being able to chew and digest fully whatever you're taking in. And so keep all of these things in mind as you're going forward and making the plans that you have for your meals.